Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program, Africa Today. Indeed, Africa's economy is forecast to shrink to 1.4 in 2022. The forecast was made by the African Development Bank Group in its latest African Economic Outlook 2022. And to shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Yomn Hamaqui, Professor of Economics. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Yomn.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Yomn, how would you describe Africa's economic growth for the first half of the year 2022?
Unfortunately, the African continent has been affected seriously by two crises. The first is the COVID-19 and then the Ukrainian-Russian war. And unfortunately, too, that, when we take into consideration the situation, the economic situation of the continent, we can see that still the continent is lacking diversification of economic activities. The burden of importation is still very high since the continent is, in deep need of food as well as even intermediate good and finished good, and so the balance of trade still in a deficit. And this war has added specifically for the countries that are importing fuel. The burden is very high, and this has been reflected on inflation. Like the whole world is suffering nowadays from inflation, this is going to be quite severe for the continent since countries are relying on importation for everything, starting from food to all other, goods and services. And from here it comes the impact of this crisis on the continent. And from here it comes the urgency to build resilience for the economy, and I believe the only way to do that is by referring to regional integration. And the continent has declared a free trade area, that is going to include all the African countries, but still we need, significant steps to be taken to activate such integration by enhancing intra-investment and intra-trade among the countries of Africa.
Yes. Also, how has the coronavirus pandemic impacted the African economy for 2022, Dr. Yomn?
Yes, it has affected seriously the African continent since by first of all increasing the cost of shipping, increasing importation cost, as well as, that paralyzing the economy by closing down, besides, increasing unemployment and deepening poverty. We all know that the highest rate of poverty is in the African continent, as well as that this continent has been affected seriously by climate change, and the repercussions of climate change. So the impact was quite severe, and after this COVID-19, 2021, the economy of the continent started to rebound, and the continent succeeded to achieve a rate of growth approximately arrived to 5%. But nowadays, all the predictions can mention that there is going to be a shrink in the rate of growth for the continent, affected by inflation, first of all, and by the impact of the Russian war.
Yes. What sectors suffered most during the first half of the year in Africa, and why, from your point of view, Dr. Yomn?
First of all, we can see that the impact of relying on importation. This is first of all. The second thing is, even the countries that they have sources of oil and so on, like Nigeria and so on. We can see that the African continent is still suffering from mismanagement, from corruption, from not being able to use resources efficiently enough, despite that we can have some successful experiences in some countries of Africa, but still the continent is in deep need to follow the vision of 2063. And I believe that when Egypt presided, the African Union for 1 year, Egypt has succeeded to, put the visionary approach towards how to enhance the diversification of the economy, how to concentrate on youth and women to upgrade human resources and enable youth to have more opportunities of job, and moving towards industrialization instead of relying on importation for everything, affected by post-colonies. All these, visionary steps that have been taken during this period should be put in order, in reality, to be translated in real opportunities of job for youth and or upgrading their skills, which I believe, from my point of view, it needs more work to be done in the ground.
Indeed, the IT sector boomed, actually, Dr. Yomn, during COVID-19 worldwide. How has been the case for the African continent?
I believe that, this, like you mentioned, we still, all the world, and we can take, nowadays, when we talk about the African continent, we can have Egypt as example. Egypt has, followed a strict program of economic reform in 2016 and succeeded to achieve monetary and financial reform. Still, we need more efforts to be done regarding structural reform by concentrating on the main sectors of the economy, like the industrial, the agriculture, and information technology. And we all know after these two, crises, to how extent self-sufficiency of food can play a significant role. And when we talk about the African continent, we have a golden opportunity nowadays to have, strategy for the continent to build these capabilities of securing our food, as well as moving towards more industrialization, so that we can generate more opportunities of job for our youth.
Indeed. Dr. Yomn Hamaqui, Professor of Economics, thank you very much for your precious input. Always a pleasure to listen to you very much. And moving on with the Environment Ministry, which discussed with the development partners the Africa Waste 50 initiative. The initiative revolves around the managing of the waste in all of the African countries. More details in the following story by Samah Sharif.
The Environment Ministry held a virtual meeting on Tuesday with development and management partners within the framework of the Africa Waste 50 initiative. The meeting aimed to discuss how the private sector and NGOs, beside the public sector and local partners, can participate to manage the waste in all African countries. During the meeting, Yasmin Fuad assured that waste management is a critical topic, especially since Egypt is hosting the upcoming UN Conference of Parties on Climate Change, COP27, in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. The initiative is being organized with partners like Roland Berger Consultancy and other partners. Fuad said, It is important to have partners in all African countries, but she has to say that without the private sector, it will not reach the desired success. She said what is needed from this meeting is to see how best the private sector can contribute to this initiative, especially in participating in using waste in generating energy or biogas. She also insisted on the importance of having sustainable finance for this African initiative to continue its work and how the private sector's participation is pivotal to its success. A presentation was then shown to participants explaining the initiative and what the main frames of work are. Another meeting will take place in September to prepare the initiative for implementation during the COP27.
In Kenya, Raila Odinga and William Ruto are in tight presidential race. Confirmed results show former Prime Minister Odinga has a slight edge over the Deputy President Ruto. More details.
Kenya's electoral body has limited access to the National Tallying Center in order to speed up the process of verifying presidential results. Anyone who is not a party agent, election observer, or part of the media should leave the center. The verification of results has been stopped several times after complaints by supporters of the main candidates. Confirmed results show former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has a slight edge over Deputy President William Ruto. With 113 of the 292 constituencies now declared, he has 50% of the vote against 49% for Mr. Ruto. Provisional results tallied by media organizations using official data from the 46,000 polling stations also show a tight race between the two candidates. About 14 million votes were cast, a turnout of 65%. The Electoral Commission has up to Tuesday next week to declare the winner.
Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC) said it is in advanced talks to obtain the monkeypox vaccines. The acting director of the CDC said the partners are largely multilateral institutions and non-African governments.
Africa's Public Health Agency says the continent of 1.3 billion people still does not have a single dose of a monkeypox vaccine, but discussions were underway with at least two partners. The acting director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Ahmed Ogwal, told journalists on Thursday that he could not give details, but said the partners are largely multilateral institutions and non-African governments. There are no discussions with the private sector because all available doses have already been bought by countries. More monkeypox deaths have been reported on the African continent this year than anywhere in the world. Since May, nearly 90 countries have reported more than 31,000 cases. At least 2,947 monkeypox cases have been reported in 11 African countries this year, including 104 deaths. But most of the cases reported are suspected ones because the African continent also lacks enough diagnostic resources for thorough testing. The lack of vaccine doses and shortage of diagnostics is an echo of the challenges that Africa's 54 countries faced for months during the COVID-19 pandemic, as richer countries elsewhere raced to secure supplies.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of Africa Today for this edition. I'm Hamaqui signing off.